Hey guys, welcome to our quick review of narrative structure and plot. This is something you guys learned about in 5th, 6th, 7th grade, but we need to review it in 8th grade just to make sure you guys still have a really good handle on the terminology, on some of this vocabulary before we move on. Tomorrow, we're going to read the story, The Book of Unknown Americans, and I want to be able to talk to you guys about the conflict and the characters and the theme and the plot, but I want to make sure you guys have a good handle, a memory of what those things are. So we're going to take this kind of one at a time. The very first term you need to know is narrative structure. Narrative is basically just a fancy word for the word story. So I want to know for the first one, what is story structure? Narrative structure is made up of all the things. So our official definition is that it is made up of all the elements, including the plot, that bring a story together. As a reminder, the plot of a story is basically the sequence of events that happen throughout the story in order. So if you're looking at the story of Moana, for example, a young girl wants to go out to the ocean, but her father wants her to be chief, but then, spoiler alert, her grandmother dies and bad things are happening on the island, so she escapes the island. So listing events in order is going to be the plot, but the narrative structure is not just those events. It also includes how everything is connected to each other. So it's also the answer to the question, why does Moana want to leave the island? What is special about Moana? It includes questions about, well, what's the conflict the main character has? It includes the effects of our main character's actions. So again, narrative structure is all of the elements, including plot, the sequence of events, that bring a story together to be that unique story. Again, plot is the sequence of events in a story. Let's talk about theme next. The definition of theme is a message about life or about human nature that's shared by the writer. It's going to usually be a very general statement that's shared by the writer. So let's look at some examples of those really fast. Some examples of theme might include statements about love or death, maybe about friendship or survival or about revenge. So maybe a theme might include something like love conquers all, or good versus evil, maybe it's good always wins. Or if it's a story about heroism, which is, like being a hero, maybe it's about the good guy will always win, and the hero's acts of bravery are what give him the right to win. So a lot of people get theme mixed up with the idea of main idea. So theme is like a really general statement that it could be applied to everyday life. The main idea is basically like what the story is about. They are two very different things. So if we look at the example of the story, The Tortoise and the Hare, or the rabbit with the turtle, and they're racing each other. And the rabbit is always ahead, but he keeps pausing to take naps. And one time he falls asleep in a nap and he sleeps too long, and the turtle in this race beats him. And so the question is, what is the theme of the Tortoise and the Hare? So the theme would be about what makes you a winner. A theme statement would be, the winner is the one who keeps going and doesn't give up. The winner is the one that keeps their eye on the goal. So that would be a theme statement. The main idea is like what's specifically happening in that story with those characters. So a rabbit challenged a turtle to a race. The turtle won because he didn't give up. So other common themes are included here, like courage, perseverance, innocence, the idea that hard work pays off. Theme does not mention specific events in the story. It's that overarching idea again. So I want to look again really fast. Sorry about the clicking. The question is, so if theme is this overarching idea in the story, how do we really identify what the theme is? If the story of Moana is about a girl braving her way across the ocean to try and return the heart to Te Fiti and restore balance to the islands and to the ocean, what is the theme about? Because the theme should be this overarching general statement. So there's two ways that we can identify theme in a story. Here we go. The first way is for you to look for explicit, which is a fancy word that means obvious, statements about the main character's ideas in the story. In Disney, there's almost always a song that reveals the true theme of the story. So look for the things that are explicit. Those are going to be the things that the characters say out loud that they're thinking. For example, in Moana, when she is on the boat, she's starting to doubt everything. She sees her grandmother's ghost. And then there's a part of the lyrics that she says, The call isn't out there at all. It's inside me. So there's one theme of Moana, is that our call, our purpose is not somewhere out there in the great unknown to find, but our call is already inside us. We just have to discover it. So that's theme number one of Moana. The other one is the idea that Te Fiti's heart got taken out from her, but even though it was taken out from her and it was out there, Te Fiti still knows who she is. And that's what Moana sings to her. She says, you know who you are. So those are explicit statements about the main character's ideas. The other one's a little bit harder, and you'll need to do some inferencing to figure it out. You can also look for implicit or implied hints. These are going to be things that are not said out loud, not said directly, but they are going to be revealed through what the characters believe and how the characters act, like the choices they make. So, for example, the choice that Maui makes to leave Moana in the movie, and he just disappears, and then towards the end he comes back. So that action of Maui also speaks loudly to the theme. The idea that even if we fail, we should get back up, right? The idea that true friends will always be beside us, and it's worth giving everything for true friends. So there's all kinds of cool things that are hidden. A movie doesn't have to have just one theme. It can have many. So anyway, explicit, the obvious things, and implicit, some of those things that are hidden underneath. So ultimately, how do you identify theme in the story? Look at what the character says, and look at what some of the characters do. Look at their actions. Look at their thoughts. Look at their actions. Those are actually going to reveal the theme. It's pretty cool. They got to be paying attention. So speaking of which, how do you identify theme in the story? The idea is pay attention to the details from the main characters. Look at what your main characters are thinking, saying, feeling, what they are doing. All of those things are going to reveal that theme. So ultimately, the characters' dialogue, what they're saying, and their actions reveal a lot. All right, so let's review conflict again really fast. Conflict, the definition is basically just the problem in the story. What is the main character's problem? Is the problem inside of them? Is it internal? Are they warring with themselves over something? Is the problem external? Is there something that they need to get or need to do, but they can't? Most stories actually have both of those types of conflict in there. So you can't have a story without conflict. It's not done. It can't be done, because conflict ultimately is what will drive that plot. It's what really gets it going. So a story is created from how the characters respond to and add to and resolve or fix the conflict. That's what the story comes out of. You have a conflict, and we want to see what the characters do to face it, to fight it, to run away from it, or to fix it. A character's identity is also revealed by how they deal with conflict. So when Moana and Maui were both faced with this daunting task of trying to beat this lava monster, Maui hightails it. He leaves. He just abandons Moana. But Moana decides that, I mean, she's really struggling and stuff, but ultimately she decides, well, I have to go back. So that tells us that Moana is a very, very strong character in the story. And ultimately, it's because of her actions and how she's influenced Maui over the story that Maui also comes back. So how characters respond to the conflict, what they do, totally shows us what the characters are like too. Let's talk about this old plot diagram. Usually when you guys want to look at the plot diagram looks something a little bit more like this beautiful little triangle here. This is a terrible example of plot. In this exact image, climax happens in the middle of the story, right? Nice and pretty and in the middle. Sadly, though, that is not what happens at all. That is not how that goes. So I want you guys to think about a movie, for example. I've been using Moana, so we can keep using Moana. But this is a little bit more what it looks like. You're going to find that the climax is going to happen a lot closer to the end, the most exciting part, where all the drama is happening. And a lot of times, the falling action happens very quickly until the end, and then the end of our story is kind of abrupt. So let's look at the order here of our basic plot diagram. The first thing you're going to have is the opening or the exposition, AKA the setting and the characters. You want to give everybody a good idea of where this is taking place. The moment that you start going from the exposition to the climax, that is a single moment called the inciting moment. The inciting moment is when we introduce the conflict. In some books, that's introduced on page 2 or page 5. Most books, it's introduced by page about 15. If you're watching a movie, it's introduced within the first 15 minutes. Kind of cool. After you have the conflict revealed in the inciting moment, you're going to have this rising action. Then all that rising action is building suspense and building tension. And then when things look really, really grim and all the fighting starts happening or the most exciting stuff starts happening, it doesn't have to actually be action, but it should be the most exciting part of the story. That's going to be the climax. That's going to be where the conflict is most obvious. And then after the conflict is resolved or not, you'll have the falling action, which is usually actually very brief. I wouldn't even give the line this much room. And then the resolution, which means that the conflict has been resolved. Or we've decided we can't resolve or fix the conflict in like a horror movie, because sometimes horror movies end in terrible ways. And the resolution is that there is no resolution. So in order, you guys need to know that you have the exposition first, you have the rising action building once you introduce the conflict, the climax, and then the falling action that leads to the resolution. For your quiz question, you need to know exposition, rising action, climax, and resolution. Excellent. Okay, so that is the pattern that plot follows, but the question is, what actually drives the plot? Like, why do we have this sequence of events? Like, do all people that write books put this in front of them and say, okay, I want to write a story, let me follow this? No, something's actually going to drive the plot. What makes the story actually happen? So your answers for that are characters and conflict. You could try to like make up any story you wanted to, but if you don't have interesting characters and you don't introduce a conflict, you are not going to have a plot. There is no story. So the two most important things that drive plot are characters and conflict. So really fast, you're going to do a name that theme thing. And I want you guys to remember that if we want to identify the theme, it all has to do with what we've been talking about. You've got to look at the main character's dialogue, what they say, and at their actions, what they do. So let's talk about Cinderella. To figure out the theme of Cinderella, we have to look at what Cinderella says and what Cinderella does throughout the movie. So I'm not going to play this video because I'm afraid that'll add to our time too much. But if you guys have seen the live action version of Cinderella, at the very beginning, Cinderella's mother is dying and Cinderella's crying. And her mother pulls her to the side and says, "You must remember above all else to have courage and be kind." Dun, dun, dun. There is an explicit statement from one of our main characters that states the theme. It's not always that obvious. So if her mother didn't say that, we could look at what Cinderella does instead. Even though her stepsisters are really mean to her, she is not cruel to them back. Well, okay, we're not looking at the Grimm's Tale version. We're looking at the Disney version. In the Disney version, kindness is a huge theme. In the live action version, courage is also a huge theme. The courage to put up with her stepsisters and then to defy her stepmother and go to the ball and follow her dreams, to meet this prince at the ball that she's already met. So really, really cool stuff. It shows in what her mother says and in what Cinderella does. In the Telltale Heart, which is the image that's represented here, a student actually found this. We want to know, well, what is the theme of the Telltale Heart? What are some things that our narrator, our creepy, crazy narrator, what does he think and what does he do? Well, he thinks the old man is evil. He kills the old man. Oh my. And then he gives himself away. So I bet you can guess that our theme is somehow related to insanity. Also that murder never pays off, because he didn't really truly go insane until he gave himself away because he was hearing the heartbeat. So murder never pays off, or the theme is just insanity and suspense. Pretty cool. So after we read our book of Unknown Americans, after we read our short story tomorrow, the question I'm going to be asking you guys is, how is the theme of identity? I'm going to go ahead and give you guys the theme of what we're reading tomorrow. The theme is identity. How is that theme of identity actually developed in this story, the Book of the Unknown Americans, through what the characters think and what the characters do? So we're going to revisit that after we read this. The theme is identity. I want you guys to be looking for hints and clues of what the characters are saying and thinking and doing that reveal that our theme is, in fact, identity in this story. All right, guys, that's a wrap for now. Thanks for sticking with me.